Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Diane Hayden. I'm the publisher of Natural Nutmeg magazine, and welcome to our weekly podcast where I interview our expert writers and contributors for Natural Nutmeg on topics ranging from natural medicine, green living, spirituality, holistic psychotherapy, and how to live a healthier, more holistic lifestyle. I'm excited to have with me today Rabbi Donna Berman. She is the executive director of the Charter Oak Cultural Center. She holds a Ph.D. in religion and social ethics from Drew University. She is Rabbi Emerita of Port Jewish Center in Port Washington, New York, where she served as spiritual leader from 1981 to 1993. She has taught at Molloy College, Wesleyan University, and Hartford Seminary. She served as the Jewish chaplain at Mount Holyoke College in Hadley, Massachusetts. And she's the co-editor of a special edition of the Journal of Reform Judaism and is the author of numerous articles. She co-edited and wrote the foreword for The Coming of Lilith, Essays on Feminism, Judaism, and Sexual Ethics, 1973 to 2003 by Judith Plaskow. Rabbi Berman received Leadership Greater Hartford's Polaris Award in Arts and Culture and has been honored by American Friends Service Committee for her work in social justice and is the recipient of the Human Relations Award from the National Conference for Community and Justice. Rabbi Berman was named one of Hartford's 12 most influential people by Hartford Magazine. So welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you?
Oh, it's good to see you, Diane. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm excited about a lot of what we're going to talk about today, your field of specialty, but I wanted to just do a little bit more background about Hartford Family Institute and how you're connected there. So if you just want to share with people a little bit about what Hartford Family Institute is and what your role is there.
Yeah, I noticed when you're reading my bio that I didn't, this is an older bio and it didn't mention all the stuff that I do at Hartford Family Institute. So thank you for that question. I've been a student I was a student at Hartford Family Institute from 2000 until 2010 when I graduated and from their training program. And then I became Naomi Lubin Alpert's assistant for 9 years. And then this past year, I kind of moved over to another program that Hartford Family Institute has. I'll explain to you later. There are two programs. And I now am actually the director of the Human Relations program at Hartford Family Institute. So Hartford Family Institute is a training institute for psychotherapists in Body-Centered Gestalt Therapy. And it also has the second program, Human Relations program, which, as I said, I direct, which is for people who are not therapists, who want to just enrich their lives, deepen their experience of this life, and become really better people.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're based in West Hartford, but I imagine now, along with all of us, they're doing virtual trainings and sessions and things like that.
Yeah, in March, we switched over to completely virtual, and we'll start the new year at the end of September virtually, and hopefully we'll be able to switch back to being in person soon, and hopefully it'll be safe enough to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, we've both discovered, I'm sure, that there's a lot that you can do virtually like we're doing right now. And thank God for Zoom and these platforms, because it
That's
certainly
right.
has made it interesting. And I think it's actually like opened up a lot of doors for people, like new ways to do things and that kind of thing. And to me, that's all about, just learning more about yourself and other people and, figuring out ways that we can still be effective, even from a virtual platform.
Yeah, it is interesting how there have been, one of the things I've learned from this experience is tragic as it's been in so many ways, and as painful as it's been in so many ways, there are hidden gifts. And I'm thinking that that's true for all things, that even the challenging things are opportunities. And so we never had a virtual version of the Human Relations program before. And there have been people from other countries, even, and other parts of the United States that wanted to take part in it. And so we're going to we're going to see if there's enough interest for it, but we're going to introduce a completely virtual version of the Human Relations program starting in September.
Yeah, that's awesome. See, now that just gives you such a wider reach too. So let's get into it, because I think people are really interested in learning more about what you do. You mentioned that one of the trainings or the focuses that you do is body-centered, I always have trouble pronouncing this, gestalt therapy. And I've had a little bit of experience with that, working with two different practitioners who practice a version of it. But I found it fascinating in terms of probably one of the most effective therapies that I have ever done in just making me become more aware of not only the way that I think, but the way that I speak and how I interact with people. So I'm very interested in just hearing more about, from your perspective about that.
Yeah, there's really a correlation between this kind of therapy and meditation, because they're both about awareness. They're both about um, not looking out at the other, but really coming inside ourselves and really realizing what we're experiencing, what we're feeling, as you were saying, how we're responding to things, being the observer of ourselves. Um, in a very deep way, in a very loving way, in a very caring way. And what happens then is all kinds of possibilities open up because you are focused on yourself in a way and bringing compassion to yourself that enables you to be more open to other people. That's the paradox. Be open to other people and more compassionate to other people. As you bring compassion to yourself, the other side of the equation is you're able to bring more compassion to other people. So it changes your whole life and your whole perspective and your whole way of interacting with others.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely found that. And I think it's interesting that we're having this conversation during the whole COVID thing because for me, so I had done some of the training before all of the changes that are going on with the pandemic, but it really helped me because a lot of my friends had a very different perspective and, let's say, response to the pandemic. I mean, some of them became very fearful, didn't want to leave their homes. Some of them, I would say, maybe used it as a reason not to do things. Some of them became very frustrated and angry because they were used to being able to go wherever they wanted. And so it was very interesting to just kind of sit back and watch like how all the different personalities handled it. And I feel like if that had happened before I'd had a lot of that training, I would absolutely have been way more judgmental about how all my different friends and family members were reacting. And when they didn't do something that I expected, or even, let's say, that I wanted, like in the past, that might have made me, I don't want to say angry, but just kind of like irritated, or like,
Yeah.
why aren't they doing what I want? And so it gave me an opportunity to really practice this type of therapy and use it and be able to be more, like you said, compassionate to them, but also compassionate to myself about different feelings that I was experiencing.
Yeah, and it's more than, in a way, psychotherapy, the term psychotherapy doesn't do it justice. It's really a path. And I think that's why it has a lot to do with the kind of consciousness that meditation brings us to. It's a practice. It's a path. There's a spiritual dimension to it. It's not just once a week or once every other week, I'm going to go talk to this person. It's really about, just as I said before, deepening this experience of this life and being more fully alive. And then again, having more room. And when you are feeling judgmental, to be able to say, oh, wow, I'm feeling judgmental. And then not bringing judgment to your own judgmentalness. And it's really quite, it's just quite a process, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was fascinating to me. It's a little difficult to explain to people sometimes, I think, exactly what the process is or how it's possible to actually step outside yourself almost. And just, to me, it was about, okay, just take a break, like take a minute. When you have a thought, just stop and take a minute and be like, okay, where did that thought come from?
Right.
What does that thought really mean? Do I really feel that way? Am I projecting something onto someone else? Am I reacting to something? And I think if you can take that pause,
Yeah.
then you can really, you know, that's what I learned about it was, if I could take that pause, I can learn to realize that, sometimes the things that I think are just, crazy. Like it's just random, thoughts. It could be programming from, a past life, or even
Right.
things that have happened to me, throughout the years, all that stuff. And it's not true. It's not necessarily true.
Right. Right. And it enables you to to respond rather than react. Taking that moment to breathe, to come back into yourself, to ground.
Yep.
It changes how you respond to somebody. In internal family systems therapy, they talk about how we have different parts to ourselves, and how you want to speak for the part, not from the part. And I love that, because what you're saying is, I could feel how I was going to get judgmental. I want to say something, and then you're speaking from that part of you that got activated. But if you step back, then you can even say to yourself, wow, I was going to do this, or I could feel how I want to say this, or I could feel how I want to act out this way. And as soon as you do that, you're speaking for the part. You're acknowledging it, but you're not acting out from it. And boy, that changes everything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it basically can be the difference of whether you go into a full blown argument, or you're able to talk about it, calmly, and it
Right.
heals the relationship and goes down a different path.
Right.
I
Like
think.
oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Well, I was going to say, with if you react, if you don't take that moment and you speak from that part, it's like adding gasoline to a fire. If you take that moment, and then you can speak for it, or and you can respond rather than react, then you're starting to take the fire down a notch.
Right. Right. I think I also learned it's about feeling, being open to the feelings. How do you feel when you think a certain thought, or when you say something? How does it make you feel? And I think if we're really aware, we realize that if somebody does something that we don't like, or says something to us that offends us, or we don't like, our initial, knee jerk reaction is you want to argue, you want to say something negative back, or you want to judge, or whatever. But if you really think about how you feel when you act that way, it doesn't feel good. Whereas if you take the pause and you think about, well, and on my part, where did that reaction come from? And did this person really mean it that way, or am I just taking it that way? And if I don't react that way, if I can react, more calmly or compassionately, how does that feel? And to me, always, that's a much better feeling.
Right. Right. It's very true. I agree. And the other thing is, um, so say you say something to me, and I get offended by it. Um, if I'm focused on myself, so I could get focused on, you said that, and I'm so mad at you, and you offended me. Or I could say, wow, so Diane said that thing. How do I feel inside myself? Oh, I feel, and then I can kind of go down, like excavate it and go down, and well, it made me feel sad, or it made me feel humiliated, and then I can tend to myself, and I don't have to come out at you. And so our tendency is, if somebody comes out with perceived offense, and then we go, and it just escalates, and that's how you have a war, either individually or even in terms of nations, because this is really a microcosm of a greater,
Hmm.
larger thing. But if I can stay in myself and not blame you, that doesn't mean I wouldn't have a boundary and say, oh, that really hurt my feelings. But if I can stay with myself, it just changes the whole dynamic. And then it's not only to protect you, it's to go inside to the kid inside of me who felt sad and felt humiliated. And now it's my opportunity, because she would have, if I feel humiliated by something you say, that's because I was humiliated long before that in my childhood. And so if I pay attention inside myself, I'm actually giving the kid something that she never had before, and healing something inside of me. I don't have to have a fight with you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the way that I looked at it. It's really an opportunity for me to, you know, look at, why am I having that reaction? Because, and I think when I first started getting into this kind of therapy, I think at first, like many people, I probably felt like, well, I don't understand why I have to look at me. That person's saying something to me that's mean, but I started to see it as, well, that person could say that same thing to somebody else, and that other person wouldn't react at all. Or like, I liken it to road rage. Like, you're driving down the road, you're on the highway, somebody cuts you off. One person might fly into a rage and freak out, but the next person might just be like, that person's having a bad day, or they didn't see me, or whatever, they didn't mean it, and they completely just let it go. And to
Right.
me, that analogy, some therapist said a long time ago, to me, that analogy made me really realize, okay, wow, it's really all about how we react. It's not about at all about what other people say to us, or do to us, or whatever. Because if two people can have completely different reactions, that means it has to come down to the person reacting.
Right.
So,
Right. And honestly, this kind of way of looking at life, I think makes it really puts us in a better position to feel safe.
mhm,
Because I remember before I did all this therapy, I would get up in the morning and I would be afraid that somebody would say the wrong thing, that my day would get off on the wrong foot, that, if I went to Starbucks and somebody was nasty, and I had because of my own childhood, I had a fear of people just being kind of nasty. And now I don't have that fear, because I don't have to, I'll go inside myself and say, oh, okay, I'm really feeling frightened, whatever it is, and give myself a connection for it. And then I have, wonderful people in my life, and I can say, oh, this happened, and I can get a connection from them.
right.
But the quality of my day, I'm responsible for it.
Oh,
I'm not,
absolutely.
I'm not at the mercy of anybody else.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's a very powerful position. I mean, it doesn't always work as I kind of put it, kind of in black and white terms. It always works. No, people do get under my skin. But when you do this kind of work, and you do this kind of practice, you have more resources and more tools, so
Sure.
that you can stay grounded, I think, more easily.
Yeah.
Your day doesn't
Yeah.
get ruined as much.
Right. And sometimes, like what you're saying with, let's say you walk into a store or something, and somebody doesn't treat you nicely or whatever. Sometimes it's just all about them. It has nothing to do with you. Your reaction has to do with you. But if
Right.
somebody, but if someone treats you negatively, they could have had just gotten terrible news, or whatever. They
Right.
could be not feeling well, and they kind of just snap
Right.
because they're not feeling well. It could be a million things is going on in
It's
that
never
person's day.
right. If somebody acts out in that way, it is never, but no matter what you did, it's about them, and whatever your reaction is about you.
Right.
It's very liberating. It's
It
really,
is.
really very liberating. Like, before I did this kind of work, I'll go back to Starbucks. And not that I even went there that much, but that seems to be my analogy today. But if somebody was, rude or nasty to me, I would immediately say, what did I do? What did I do to deserve that? And now I realize, no, that person is going around their day, or maybe every day of their lives, or whatever, with that kind of energy, having nothing to do with me. My job is to look at what got touched, even the fact that I thought I did something wrong. Well, that tells me something about my childhood.
Hmm.
So then I could be with the kid inside of me. But our natural inclination, and the kind of the thrust of our society, is always to be looking outside of ourselves. It's really counterintuitive in our society to go inside ourselves. And that's in terms of trying to heal things, in terms of like alcohol or drugs or whatever. There's a matter. I mean, we're kind of told to avoid the hard feelings and
Sure.
to try to escape. And then when we do have a hard feeling, to blame, or when somebody does something, rather than going inside ourselves to blame them or to have an argument. So this is a whole other way of approaching life. It's a very internal kind of way. And rather than reaching for a drink or reaching for drugs or whatever, really saying, I'm going to stay with this difficult feeling, because that's the only way to heal it. If I try to get out of myself in any kind of way, I'm not going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Absolutely. And that's the hard part, is sitting with the feeling, especially if you've never done that. But I can say from my own personal experience that yes, it's hard. And yes, your body doesn't want to be in that feeling, but it always passes.
Right.
So, you know, but people do have to experience that for themselves, I think.
And it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
It really does take a lot of courage because it's uncomfortable. We don't have a society that really supports it. And, people are like, get over it, whatever they say. But really the way to quote unquote get over it is to be in it. There's just no other way. Otherwise, it's just going to keep happening.
Right.
So the healing part is really staying with it. Almost like, I always think of it as kind of like riding a bronco, like in a rodeo. Like you just got to, you just want to run away. You want to get off. But if you stay on it, if you stay with it, if you stay with yourself, there is so much healing.
Well, you tame it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what kinds of impact can this type of therapy have on people? Well, I'm sure you've seen some amazing things.
Well, Stuart Alpert and Naomi Lewin Alpert are the founders of Body-Centered Gestalt Therapy and Hartford Family Institute. And they always say that they've seen people's shoe sizes change and like their bodies.
Are you kidding? Wow, that's
No.
not what I expected you to say.
I know, right? But that
Wow.
really stuck with me over all these years. And you'd have to ask them how that exactly happened. But I think there are physical changes that happen too. But somebody once said, it's actually Michael Brown, he said, the idea of all this stuff is not to feel better, but to get better at feeling. And so it's really looking at the full palette of human emotion and owning it, not acting out, trying not to act out from it. And if we do, because everybody does occasionally at least, owning it, taking responsibility. So I think that what happens is you have more of a sense of peace, more of a sense of yourself, more of a sense of compassion. But when I say you have more of a sense of peace, I have to qualify that because, again, like you were just saying, there are going to be hard feelings. But underneath that is the peace. Underneath that is the fullness of life. So I think it's not an easy path for sure. And it does take a lot of courage. I often think about people who climb the Himalayas or, they do all these adventure trips and things, which is great. We have it inside ourselves. The mountains are inside ourselves to climb also, and that takes as much courage and as much fortitude. So I think at the end of this whole process, not that it ever ends, is a richness, a texture to life that we don't necessarily have if we kind of whitewash things and try to escape from our feelings, and a better connection to ourselves, which means a better connection to other people, and a taking of responsibility. So you don't have to hide. You just say, yeah, you know what, I can feel murderous. Yeah, I mean, these are all the feelings we all have, but we don't really
talk about it.
Safe enough to, what was that?
Yep. Talk about it.
To talk about it.
Yep.
But that's one of the things I love about Hartford Family Institute. It's one of the few places where you can say, oh my God, I felt so murderous last night. And somebody else like, me too. I felt that way last week. Because the truth is we feel the spectrum of emotions. And so it's very freeing. And that's where part of the peace comes from, is that you don't have to hide things. Mm-hmm. You can just be in yourself, and you can, really, own your shadow side. I mean, something I did, I don't know why I picked Thanksgiving, but a few Thanksgivings ago, I just made a list of everything I knew about my shadow side. I can be this, I can be this, I can be this. And it was a long list. And I'm sure it wasn't comprehensive because we don't know everything about our shadow side. We probably don't know everything about our light side either. But just being in that and owning it and being able, so then if you say to me, you know what, Donna, I really thought you shot me a really cold look when I said this. And now I can say to you, you know what, I have that in me. I could do that. And I'm sorry. And we, like you were saying before, you would probably feel safer if I said that to you, but I feel safer too, because I don't have to be defensive. We develop our defensive structures for good reason as kids.
Yeah, for protection.
Right, it's protection, and it allows us to survive. But what happens is we keep those defensive structures in place, and it becomes like an armor, and it can get harder and harder and kind of reified. And so two things happen then. One is it's harder to connect to people. And then we're like confused. Well, I'm just doing this to, not that it's conscious, but if we could speak from consciousness. Well, I don't know. I want to protect my heart, but I want to be connected to you. And I don't know how to do both of those things. And the other thing is that we can feel very justified in our armor, but armor can become a weapon too. It's not just protection. Our armor really becomes, as we become adults, it really starts to hurt other people. Mm-hmm. So the whole point of this kind of therapy and the human relations program at Hartford Family Institute is to learn to recognize our defensive structure, to appreciate what it did for us, and there are ways to feel safer so that you don't have to have this armor that keeps other people out and hurts other people.
Right. Yeah. I think also what you said about physical changes is probably not that far-fetched, because I'm reading a book right now called The Telomere Effect.
Oh yeah, I have it.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh,
yeah.
That book is amazing. Amazing. But basically what those two researchers are saying is that, you know, your thoughts can absolutely change your genes, your genetics, essentially, whether they turn genes on or off, which can then determine, you know, everything from, you know, how long you live, to what kinds of diseases you get, to whether you know, how your body is. So not surprising that, you know, something, you know, therapy with the mind could actually have a physical effect on someone.
Yeah, and that's why this is called Gestalt therapy, because Gestalt is the German word for whole. It engages the whole body, not just, you know, it's not just talk therapy. There's actually movement in it, and chair work, which I'm happy to, you know, to talk about if you like. But there's literally the whole body is engaged. Might be an experiment, might be imagery, might be all kinds of things that we do. So and there's noticing the body. Gee, when I'm talking to you, my heart is beating a little faster, I'm breathing a little faster. Really being aware of our whole bodies, not just our heads, which are part of our body, but we tend to privilege them up beyond the rest of our body. So yeah, it makes a huge difference in terms of I mean, I haven't seen anybody's shoe size change that I'm aware of, but I have seen people look different. I have seen people's faces soften, and even their bodies soften, and how they kind of, you know, how they hold themselves change. So it's got an impact on all aspects of our lives.
Yeah, and it makes sense. You know, like I think everything is interconnected. So even with therapy, most people probably think about it more in the sense of talk therapy, or just, you know, using your mind or your thoughts. But if it's all interconnected, there should absolutely be a body component to it as well, a physical component. Right. So I think that would be very appealing to people, especially people who have not either gotten great results with talk therapy, or for whatever reason just doesn't, to me, I feel like there's only so far that you can go with that. And I see a lot of people get to a point where they just don't progress anymore with that type of therapy.
Right. You know, this kind of, and again, you know, what's interesting too is that it's not a once a week thing, because it's a practice. So even though I may not be seeing my therapist until next week, like in this moment, as I'm talking to you, I want to make sure I'm grounded. It's an interesting thing about grounded. As soon as you say I'm not grounded, you're grounded. Because grounding just means being in reality.
Right.
So, but even as I'm talking to you, I'm trying to, you know, be aware of my body and how I'm, you know, and asking myself that question that we ask everybody and we don't really wait for the answer to: how are you?
Right.
So I'm trying to learn to slow that down and ask how are you, and really listen, and do the same for myself. Really, how am I? And, you know, what is the answer? Not fine, not good, but yeah, I'm a little tired today. I was telling you before, I just got back from vacation last night. I'm a little bit in that world and back in my work world, but I'm not quite landed yet. And so what's nice about this kind of therapy is, again, because it's no judgment, it's just what's real. You know, right now, I just, right. I'm in this in-between vacation and work. That's where I am. And that's where I can speak genuinely to you. But I could have chosen, and sometimes I still do, to override that. I just, oh, I'm fine, I'm great, but it's the realness that actually relaxes you because you don't have to build a facade over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have room inside myself, and then I can, talk with you better and more deeply and be more present.
Right. That makes sense to me, just, from another perspective as far as stress reduction, that especially nowadays, we should all be able to do that. We're all dealing with, another level of stress from everything related to, people around us who might have been sick, to our businesses, to just all the changes that we've had to deal with. So to me, it's a relief to just be real about everything.
Right.
Yeah,
It takes so much more effort not to be honest.
exactly.
So just really landing in, being honest about what's going on, where we are, if it really, oh my God, it's so much less energy. And then you have more energy to do, good stuff in the world, for
Exactly.
yourself and for others. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I hope that people will be interested. This program, I started in the human relations program when I started at Hartford Family Institute 20 years ago. And then I moved on into the professional program because I'm a rabbi. I was able to do that. But the human relations program really, really, really changed my life. I mean, my shoe size,
Yeah.
but it really did, because there were things I didn't understand about myself. I didn't understand certain reactions I had to things. I was almost an enigma to myself. And I felt like I wasn't in control of my life. That it was almost like everything seemed kind of random. And now I understand things better. And now I can make decisions from a different kind of deeper place. And I'll tell you, I recently went down into my basement. I found my high school yearbook, which is always frightening. And I looked at my picture, and my eyes, I was you could tell I was so dissociated. And I looked at that kid, and I just had a lot of compassion for her, because again, dissociation is a survival technique. It's a defensive system. When things are so bad that you can't be in the reality of it, you dissociate.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you can be honest about things, you can come back and be present. But interestingly enough, that just talking about diseases, there's a theory that's been borne out by some research, and I just intuitively think that it's true, that if we dissociate as a defensive structure, which is great because it helps us survive, if we maintain it, it could lead later on in life to Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm. I'm
Because
sure. Yep.
that's what our brain does. It's going away from reality. It can't deal with reality. So at the very least, whether that's true or not, at the very least, coming out of dissociation into reality feels better. And then, because you can't when you dissociate from everything, not just the bad stuff. So you dissociate from this lovely conversation we're having, or the fact that your friend brought you a bowl of soup, or that, your birthday celebration. You dissociate from everything. You're not really fully present. So it's kind of like getting the cobwebs off and
Mm-hmm.
cleaning it up, and being able to be in our lives, which is the only place we really can be. And yet it's so hard for so many people because of the pain that they've experienced and the wounds that they've experienced. But they don't have to live their whole lives that way. That's what this is really about. As bad as it was, it doesn't have to be that. There are ways to heal and to get greater fullness of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I think also, you know, for me, one of the personal things was that when after I went through a lot of this therapy, I looked at so many things differently. Like, I looked at my work differently. I looked at my relationship differently. I looked at my relationship with my mother differently. And had I not done it, I probably would have made some decisions that ultimately would not have been the best decisions for me, because I wouldn't have really made them from a place of, really understanding myself and what I truly wanted, and why I reacted to things certain ways, and why I may have just dissociated sometimes. And so that to me is, one, a huge gift, and two, it made me, really wake up like, oh wow, like what if I made that decision and then it ended up not, I ended up losing something that I really truly wanted.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I recently I've taken to, and again, this is not to say that anybody does this perfectly or does it all the time, but it does mean that sometimes I can catch myself before acting out.
mhm.
And hopefully, please God, at least it's my intention that when I do act out, I can come back and say, I acted out. I'm sorry. I can really own it.
Right.
Um, but I was going to say something else. What was I going to say?
Well,
Oh, the question I keep asking myself recently is, I wanted to call somebody and quote unquote clarify something. That energy. I'm going to clarify. You said X, different. And when I before I made the call, I said to myself, "This is such a good question. I never occurred to me before." Okay, you can do that, but would it be from a grounded place? And as soon as I asked that question of myself, I knew no, it wasn't, and I lost the desire. In that moment, it felt so delicious, like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna say it. And then I was like, oh no. And then I didn't have that venom dripping
right.
from
Yeah,
my fangs.
right. It completely changes your emotion.
It really does. And again, it's a pulling back into self.
Hmm.
You know, um, I mean, it's just again a paradox. We pull back into ourselves, and we can connect better with others.
Yeah,
It's like
very
the
true.
whole ball of wax is, I often think also like it's like we're cameras, and if you took a picture and it was blurry of a sunset, say for example, you wouldn't blame the sunset,
Right. That's pretty funny.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, okay, what am I seeing? How am I, like you were saying, just because I see it some way doesn't necessarily mean it's that person meant it that way or whatever. It just means that I have
Doesn't
a
mean it's
wound.
true.
Yeah, right. I
Doesn't mean
touched a
true.
wound inside of me.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a lot of, I think the other tricky thing is when you're in a relationship with another person, um, there's a way that you have to hold on to yourself, and also, so if you're in a partnership, say for example, and the other person says something that offends you, and then you just strictly go inside yourself and say, oh, what it got touched in me, or the other person could also feel a little left out
Hmm.
because it's so, so it is an interesting balance. I think the balance comes with saying to the other person, when you said this is what happened inside of me, and and I was able to bring comfort to my little kid, and then I don't, maybe your partner can join you bring comfort to the little kid.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's a whole different way of living, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep, it is. But I would encourage everyone to, at least learn more, if not experience it for sure.
Yeah,
So,
can I just say, at Hartford Family Institute, they have the training program, but they also have lots of therapists who practice, and healers of different sorts that practice this kind of thing. And so, if somebody's looking for a therapist or a massage therapist, or somebody does Reiki or whatever, it's a great resource. And the other thing is, our program, our human relations program, it is such a beautiful, warm, compassionate community. So you get to explore all the stuff about yourself and the shadow side and all the things that we spend our time hiding with people who are loving and welcoming of all parts of ourselves. And that helps us accept ourselves too, to have that mirrored in other people. So it's a really an extraordinary experience. I can't, and I say that, yes, obviously I now direct the program, but I say that as somebody who went through it. It really is life changing. It's the healing ointment to all our wounds, really, to be in such an accepting, safe environment where you can explore all these things and
And
know that you'll be loved.
and definitely what people need right now, for sure, for sure. And I
Yes.
think you have a great perspective because you've been through it as a student and now as director. So I'm glad you also mentioned that there are individual therapists there because I'm sure people are interested in that too. If not, the programs. So how can people, learn more? How can people connect with you or Hartford Family Institute? Any information you want to give us?
Yeah, Hartford Family Institute is on South Highland Street in West Hartford. And the number there is 860-236-6009. So 860-236-6009. And people can call and ask for me, Donna Berman. They can ask about the Human Relations Program. If they're a therapist, they can ask about the professional program. People who answer the phones and run the office are wonderful. And if somebody's looking for a therapist, they can help them find the right person for them. But I'm happy to have people contact me through Hartford Family Institute. If anybody's interested in joining our Human Relations Program, our opening weekend is the last weekend in September.
Okay.
And then we meet on Wednesday nights from 5:30 to, we just changed the time, so I have to 9, from 5:30 to 9. So it's 5:30 to 7 is a lecture, and then from 7 to 7:30 is a little break, and then 7:30 to 9 is the small group, and that's what I run. Is a small group. And do you want to hear about what the evening is like? Do we have time? Or
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
so the partners, David Gilroy, Donna Baker Gilroy, and Naomi Lubin Alpert and Stuart Alpert do lectures for the first half of the evening, and they're not lectures like any lecture I've ever heard, because they're body centered, so it's not just like a cerebral experience. It's a full body experience. So they'll do experiments, they'll have people meditate, they'll have people do a kind of a body scan of themselves to see what they're feeling, all kinds of really cool stuff. And they'll talk about the principles of body-centered Gestalt therapy. And then there's a break. Do you want me to say what that consists of? That consists of a tuna fish sandwich or hot chocolate.
Or
And
if you're virtual, it consists of whatever you want to go
whatever
have.
you want. And then we meet again at 7:30, and that's our small group, which this year we had about 10 or 11 people. So we're anticipating we're going to have actually 2 groups this year and a virtual group. So so there we do a little meditation in the beginning and a check-in, and then anybody who wants to do a piece of work, which is a piece of therapy with me, they would do it. And we usually get to do 2 or 3 in the course of the hour and a half. So it's a kind of a shorter piece of work, but it's real. It's not play acting or anything. Somebody comes with a real issue, and everybody is watching and being supportive. And it's amazing what you yourself can learn and feel from watching someone else do therapy, because
Totally.
it's right. You would
Yep.
think, why do I want to watch somebody else do therapy?
Oh, no.
No.
Trust me. I mean, you will work through some of your own issues by watching it, because when you see yourself in someone else and how you like this, that exact thing happened to me through one of the programs that I went through, and it was a husband and wife, and they were discussing some issue that they were working on, and the way that she reacted to him, or even things that she said, I was like, oh my God, I've done that. Oh yeah.
Is that amazing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yep.
really incredible. And because we have these universal issues,
Yep.
and the details might be a little different, but oh my God, it's like you could, I sometimes I feel like I've had my most profound therapeutic experiences watching somebody else. Like you could feel a whole shift in yourself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. 100%.
And then people get total support afterwards. And, there's also something to having our stories and our struggles be witnessed
Hmm.
with compassion and love, not just by a therapist, but by other people. So the whole thing, and then at 9 o'clock it ends, and then everybody's like, "When's next Wednesday? We want to come back." It's
That's
cool.
awesome.
And then there are people who sign up for the program and have 2 weekend workshops, and you get to choose what you want to go to. And it's like one's animal imagery, another is illness and pain, and another one. I mean, they're just really cool topics. And then you get to pick 2 of them, and then you go on Saturday and Sunday. So that's twice in a year. And then we have this thing called summer camp, which is 5 days in usually the end of May, the beginning of June, and it's 5 day intensive days of basically 3 hours of group work in the morning, and then small group for 3 hours in the afternoon. And that I have to tell you, and that's optional for human relations people. For the professional program, it's part of the program. Those 5 days, I have felt like I came home literally a different person. It's like a year's worth of therapy.
Hmm.
It's so extraordinary, and it's really hard to come home.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
I
fact,
bet.
Naomi and Stuart always say, get somebody's phone number, make sure you keep in contact, because it's really hard to go back into, because you live in this. Yeah,
Yeah.
do you remember the days when we used to be able to get together? Well, back then,
Right.
so it's residential. We're all staying in this, lovely place and doing this work together. And I guess I want to say one other thing, and that is, it is work. It's internal work inside ourselves, but it not only helps our relationships with other people, our partners, our husbands, our wives, our parents, and our people at work, but it sends a different energy into the world. And it's larger work than just on ourselves. And I think that when we feel like it's hard to know what to do to heal the world, this is part of that work.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And that is also something that is really needed right now. So, just another benefit, of course.
Right?
Awesome.
It's like resting. It's like Russian nesting dolls.
Yep.
It's like, you help yourself, you help your relationships. It just keeps expanding out.
Yeah. 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 That's great. That is great. Cool. Well, people can get in touch with you via the phone number, and also, is it HartfordFamilyInstitute.com, the website?
I don't know. I
Well,
think so.
we'll put it up on, when we edit it, it'll be up on the first page with your name, so people will be
Oh,
able to
great,
find that.
great,
So they'll
great,
have it
great.
they'll be able to tell us by the time they get to this part of the recording.
Oh, good,
What
good,
the
good,
website
good.
is. But awesome. This has been great. All the information is fantastic. Great discussion, which I knew it would be. And I want to thank you again for your time, and
Oh,
encourage everybody to reach out to you.
thank you so much. It was really, really lovely to talk with you.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.